We're now less than 10 days away from seeing Donald Trump and Kamala Harris on the stage for the very first time. The ABC News presidential debate in Philadelphia is, of course, on September 10th. So let's bring in one of Trump's biggest supporters, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And Senator Graham, before we get to the campaign, I want to ask you about the devastating news overnight out of Israel. I know that you have been a big advocate for the hostages, and you got to know, Senator, you got to know the parents of Hirsch quite well. What's your reaction to this heartbreaking news?
Heartbroken,
yeah,
devastated, mad. John and Rachel have done everything in their power to help their son be released from captivity. After 11 months of captivity, he was murdered by Hamas. Hamas could care less about the hostages or the Palestinians. And if you want the hostages home, which we all do, you have to increase the cost to Iran. Iran is the great Satan here. Hamas is the junior partner. They're barbaric religious Nazis, Hamas. They could care less about the Palestinian people. I would urge the Biden administration and Israel to hold Iran accountable for the fate of remaining hostages and put on the target list oil refineries in Iran if the hostages are not released.
We heard from the White House overnight a statement from President Biden saying that Hamas leaders will pay for these crimes. That was what the president said.
What are they going to pay? I mean, what's the price? I mean, they've destroyed a lot of Gaza. They put their own people in harm's way. Hamas could care less about the Palestinian people. Mr. President, Bibi, if you want to really change things when it comes to the hostages, tell the Ayatollah what he values is on the target list. Until that happens, nobody's coming home.
All right, Senator Graham, I'm going to turn to the campaign. You have said that Donald Trump is poised, can win this race if he stays focused on the contrast between his record and the Biden-Harris record, if he focuses on the issue. So let me ask you the flip side of that. How can he lose this campaign?
I think the way that they're running the campaign is to draw him into insult debates, get off script, get off the issues. This poll, to me, is very encouraging. Now, in a head-to-head race, Trump is losing slightly, but on the issues, Trump, economy +8, inflation +8, border +9. My God, that's a blowout. Focus on the issues, Mr. President. Every poll says the same thing. The American people trust you with what matters the most to them: the economy, inflation, border security, and just managing the government. If I were you, my friend, I would focus on those issues laser-like, and you will win this race.
And if you look at what the former president has said just in the last week or so about Kamala Harris as he looks ahead to this debate, he has called her, quote, low IQ, dumb, someone who, quote, can't put two sentences together. Now, those sound a little bit more like schoolyard taunts than the stuff of a presidential campaign. Yeah. But it's also a strange way to set expectations before a debate.
Yeah, I think she's, she's been a senator, she's attorney general, she's now vice president. Obviously, she has some talent. But here's what I would say. On foreign policy, she's been a wrecking ball. On Israel, she sat there and listened to somebody call the Israeli government and people engaging in genocide and did nothing about it. She boycotted Bibi's speech to the Congress, sending the signal to Hamas and Iran that America really doesn't have Israel's back. She was cheerleading the withdrawal from Afghanistan. She's bragged about being the last person in the room, the dumbest decision maybe in modern history by American administration. I was in Munich when she warned the Russians not to invade Ukraine. 4 days later, they did. She's been in charge of the border in some way. I don't know what the hell she's been doing on the border, but we've got more terrorists in our country than any time in history, and fentanyl poisoning is the leading cause of death among young people in America. That's what I would hit her with. She's been a wrecking ball on foreign policy. It's been the most incompetent administration I can remember on things that matter to the American people: your safety and your prosperity. That's what I would talk about, not her IQ. Her job performance has been lousy.
By the way, that speech by Netanyahu, as I recall, J.D. Vance didn't go either. So maybe a double boycott there.
But he wasn't. Yeah, but he wasn't vice president of the United States, and nobody doubts J.D.'s support for Israel. J.D. has been unequivocally supporting Israel. She has been horrible. She's slow walking weapons. She didn't attend the speech, and that juiced up every terrorist in the region. So it's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, but I would also point out that in her speech, she said, in her speech to the convention, she said, contrary to what many in her own party wanted her to say, promised to give Israel what it needs to defend itself. But let me move on.
The damage has been done. She was vice president of the United States. She refused to come and attend a joint session of Congress with the Prime Minister of Israel. That sent the worst possible signal you could send.
But let me ask you about another big issue this week. President Trump seemingly out of nowhere came out of public funding for IVF treatments and a mandate for insurance companies to fund them. Where did this come from? I know Congress had a vote on this. You voted against it. Every Republican in the Senate voted against it except for two. Where did this come from?
I think he's just trying to show his support for IVF treatments that, we've been accused, the party has, of being against birth control. We're not. We've been accused of being against IVF treatments. We're not. And one thing I thought about after what he said, we have tax credits for people who have children. Maybe we should have a means-tested tax credit for people using IVF and other treatments to become pregnant. I would support a tax credit, means tested, kind of like we do with children. That makes sense to me to encourage people to have children.
But you wouldn't support this idea of mandating insurance companies to cover this, would you?
No.
I mean, you've already voted against it.
Because there's no end to that. Yeah, there's no end to that. I think a tax credit for children makes sense, means tested. And I think let's look at that concept for people trying to have a child.
Okay,
that makes some sense to me. I'll talk to my Democratic colleagues so we might be able to find common ground here.
Okay, let me ask you also about this incident at Arlington National Cemetery. Obviously, I know former President Trump was invited by the families to be there. Yeah. But here's the statement that the Army has put out about what happened. They say participants in the August 26th ceremony and the subsequent Section 60 visit were made aware of federal laws, Army regulations, and DOD policies which clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds. An Arlington National Cemetery employee who attempted to ensure the adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside. The incident was unfortunate, and it is also unfortunate that that employee and her professionalism has been unfairly attacked. Did the campaign cross a line here?
I don't know. I think we need to, I'm all for looking at what happened. But what really is unfortunate? That these families had to go visit their fallen loved ones at Arlington due to incompetence by the Biden administration. I've tried to work with President Biden to get Saudi and Arabia and Israel to reconcile. I've supported a lot of their nominees. I've known President Biden for a long time. But Vice President Harris bragged about being the last person in the room cheerleading the withdrawal of all forces that led to the death of these 13, rise in terrorism, combine that with a broken border, another 9/11's coming our way. So what I take away from this whole debate about Arlington is why they died, how they died, and the incompetency that led to their death. To the American people, we've lost deterrence. Nobody in the world is afraid of Kamala Harris. She has become, in my view, ineffective in terms of a voice for America. So if you want to avoid more dead Americans, vote for Trump.
And I know you also opposed Donald Trump's talk of quickly getting out of Afghanistan as well. Senator Graham, thank you very much for joining us on This Week.